I'd like to start by asking each of you to think about the most fearless thing you've ever done. I'll give you a moment. Think about the most reckless and crazy thing you've ever gone through with. Do you have it? Now I'd like you to think about why you deem it to be fearless. Is it because you felt no fear, or because you were absolutely terrified but you went through with it anyway? Well, Merriam-Webster defines fearless as free from fear. My interpretation is not so easily defined. To me, being fearless means doing the things we're afraid of doing, going places foreign and unknown to us, and becoming the person we are in our hearts and who we were born to be. Fear itself is a powerful emotion that exists for a reason. Fear is our body's way of telling us when something is potentially harmful. There's a stark difference between rational and irrational fears. I'm not interested in talking about rational fears, as they are valid. What I am interested in talking about is irrational fears. Those are the fears that keep us from doing the things we want to do, going the places we want to go, and becoming the person we want to be. Irrational fears are relatively inconsequential, like the fear of coming on stage tonight. I feared that I could trip while walking on stage, or that you wouldn't like what I was wearing, or you might even think that I'm the worst speaker you've ever heard. But none of those fears hold any real consequences. Even if any of those fears come true, I will still walk out of here unscathed and alive. So let's get back to your fears. Each person in this room most likely has a very different personal story about fearlessness. It may be something as monumental as skydiving in the Grand Canyon or starting a new business, or it might be something as simple as going out to eat at a restaurant alone for the first time or trying to make new friends. Well, I've done a few of those things. My most fearless adventure was buying a tuk-tuk and driving it down the western coast of India. For those of you who aren't sure, a tuk-tuk is a tiny, three-wheeled, open-air taxi with a two-stroke engine, similar to a golf cart, but drives more like a motorcycle. Looking back, I wonder why I felt the need to be so daring and to push the boundaries so far. Just being a single female traveler in India should have been enough to feed a hungry adventurer. I was hot, I was tired. Even the simplest of tasks were difficult for me, like buying a train ticket or a cell phone, or finding a bathroom that didn't make me want to cry. But while I rarely left my comfort zone in my hometown of Cheyenne, Wyoming, somehow it made me feel so vibrant and alive on the other side of the world. With every twist and turn in my story, I felt free to be whoever I wanted to be. I came to the idea of this wild adventure after traveling throughout northern India for a few months. A clerk at my hotel mentioned this totally insane idea to me, probably assuming I wouldn't take him seriously. This was a ludicrous idea to him, since tuk-tuks were only made for traveling short distances with a top speed of about 25 to 30 miles per hour. To him, no one in his right mind would even drive to another town. But I'd always considered myself an adventurous spirit, so why not? Over the next few days, and with the help of the locals, I found an old tuk-tuk that an old taxi driver was selling. I spent the next few weeks getting the oil leaks fixed, having a new horn and stereo system installed, and I even had it repainted to say, "Save water, save trees, and send your daughters to school" in English and in Hindi. I planned my departure day with a local Hindu Brahmin through astrology, but as that day came closer and closer, I started to feel buyer's remorse. Or more intensely, I wondered if I was making a serious mistake. So I tried to find somebody to talk me out of it, and at the age of 28 years old, I called my mother. I figured she would tell me it was too dangerous and outrageous, and that I must return home immediately. But even though she feared for me and my safety, she didn't say that. Because she trusted me and my judgment, she simply told me to be careful, never to drive at night, and to check in with her so she knew that I was safe. That was it. I had to go. So after getting the go-ahead from the mechanic and a blessing from the Hindu Brahmin, I loaded up my bags and fired up my new traveling vessel. As part of my parting ceremony, I was fed an unknown substance. Indians often shared their food with me, so it didn't seem out of the ordinary. But the bitter taste forced me to ask what it was, and after multiple translations, I came to the conclusion that it was opium. Terrified of its effects, I forcefully regurgitated as much as I could. It was not the best way to start a road trip. And then on the way out of town, I blew a tire. Only now do I know that that was just a sign of luck, for this journey would ultimately lead me on a path of happiness. I drove and drove and drove some more. Including stops for chai, curry, and fuel, I was on the road for about 8 hours a day. Some days went better than others. My rickshaw broke down a lot. I ran out of fuel often. Jeeps full of girls on their way to school would often honk and smile and wave at me. A few hours before dark, I would start to look for a place to stay, unsure if I would make it to the next town before sundown. I was often refused a hotel room, even if there were vacant rooms, because I was a foreigner. My spare tire, spare fuel tank, and map all flew out at one point or another, and within a few weeks, my horn and speakers were either broken or stolen as well. I was so hot and dusty, and some nights I considered abandoning my rickshaw and going somewhere easier, somewhere touristy where everything would be laid out for me. But I didn't go on this adventure to hang out with other tourists, and most days, even through all of the hassle and plight, I loved the adventure. I knew that if I was back home, none of what was going on would be acceptable to me. But something in me wanted to continue, to see what was on the other side of comfort. One of my most heartening moments that I remember was from the beginning of my rickshaw journey, when I was broken down for approximately the 15th time in 3 days, on the side of a hot, dusty, and seemingly abandoned desert highway. My rickshaw was not unlike a 1970s Volkswagen van, as it often had to be push-started. An American girl who came along for the ride for the first few days tried pushing me down a hill to no avail. And after about 20 minutes with no luck, a group of 5 or 6 children on their way home from school came out of nowhere and started pushing us. I laughed, knowing that there was no way they could get us back on the road. But we jumped back in, and it magically started back up. I was amazed. Here were these children. We couldn't speak the same language. We had no way to communicate what we needed. Yet they instinctively knew how to help us. They didn't want anything from us. They just wanted to help. And as I drove away, I laughed until it turned into tears. And as I looked back at them giving us the international thumbs up sign, all was well in the world. I got stranded many more times after this and always received the help I needed from Good Samaritans. At one point in my travels, I even met a nice lawyer couple who would soon unknowingly arrange my marriage by introducing me to the man I only knew as Bawaji. I met my new friends Mishraji and Rupali about a month into my rickshaw journey in the beach destination of Daman. After hearing my plan to travel to the southern tip of India by myself, my new friends said they would not allow me to travel alone any longer, and they knew the perfect person to accompany me. They said I must meet them in their home city of Mumbai, where they would show me the sights and send me off with one of their friends. But I had other plans. After being on the road for some time already, I was starting to feel comfortable being alone. And being as stubborn as I am, I wasn't interested in having an escort, especially somebody I didn't know. Nonetheless, I reluctantly met them in their home city of Mumbai, where they introduced me to all of their friends and family. And everyone was so welcoming. But it wasn't until just before dinner when another man appeared, and Mishraji said, "Here, this is Bawaji. He will be driving with you to Goa." I was immediately drawn to this man and his presence, and I could no longer resist. So I enthusiastically said, "Okay." We spent the next few days getting to know each other before embarking, but little did I know I would never have to travel alone again. My rickshaw only had room in front for the driver, so Farhad sat behind me. We talked nonstop during our bumpy ride, learning about one another and each other's cultures. I told him about growing up in a large family in the rural United States and about exploring the world, and he told me about his tight-knit group of friends and his religion. We got lost more than once along the way, only to find an even more beautiful route. We made frequent stops for watermelon, chai, and fuel, and we were starting to fall in love. I'll skip all of the mushy love stuff for now, but had I not been open to new experiences, I would not have said yes to Farhad, the love of my life, when he asked me to marry him on the 11th day I knew him. There are many things I would not have done in my life had I let fear rule over me. Going to college was a big one. Not necessarily enrolling, but getting over anxiety and actually showing up for classes every single day. Or more recently, starting a yoga practice. I thought a person should have a perfect yoga body and know how to do a perfect downward dog before stepping foot in a studio. But that simply wasn't true. That was fear giving me false ideas and telling me I wasn't good enough when I already was. I am. We all are. Not everything has turned out as planned, however. I've had struggles along the way as well. It took me 7 years to graduate college with a bachelor's degree. Farhad and I tried opening a small import business downtown that was a complete failure, at least commercially. It's been harder than expected to start a family. But I don't regret any of these trials and tribulations, as each of them has taught me a valuable lesson and made me the person I am today. I can't speak for all of you, but I know I wouldn't be the person I am today had I not pushed through fear and done the things that I dreamed of. The things that I have gained by pushing through fear are too great to measure. They're not tangible. Pushing through fear has allowed me to continue my education, given me a physical and spiritual well-being, and introduced me to my life partner. Because my talk is mostly about my personal experiences, my research included gaining a knowledge about myself through my friends. I found out that I was high maintenance, spoiled, and intolerant. And while I can't claim to have relinquished all of said characteristics, I'm not the same person my friend met as a sophomore at the University of Wyoming. I'm not the same person I was before I went to India. And I keep bringing up India, but while I thought the rickshaw ride was the most difficult part of my journey, all of the smaller things added up to something even more. Changes within ourselves don't always occur from one large life-changing experience, but often many smaller things that add up over time. I didn't have the time, energy, or room in my suitcase to be high maintenance. If I got upset every time something didn't go my way, I would have gotten on a plane and left India. I mean, on the surface, nothing went my way there, at least not in the way I'd gotten used to in the United States. But by the end of my journey, I would find out that fate had plans for me that I was unaware of, that in the end, I would gain more than I ever bargained for. A sense of self, a sense of freedom, and the best life partner I could have imagined. Well, it's hard to know for sure since my odometer, fuel gauge, and all other mechanical devices were broken. I'd estimate I drove about 2,800 kilometers or 1,800 miles. I'd also estimate I drank about 540 cups of chai, ate endless amounts of curry, felt more emotions than I knew existed, and met more wonderful people than I could have ever imagined. Now I'd like to challenge you. What is something you've dreamed of doing but haven't done out of fear? What do you have to gain if you follow through? And what do you have to lose? When you go home tonight, I want you to answer these questions honestly and take that fearless leap. Go back to school. Start salsa dancing lessons. Take a trip to Morocco. Just remember, everything you've ever wanted is on the other side of fear. Thank you.